Hey true believers, this is Dr. T and welcome to my comic book channel. Today I have an amazing video for you. I attended the Friday of Baltimore Comic Con and came away with two major Dr. T Grails, the biggest comic book pickups of my entire life. Stay tuned. Since moving to Northern Virginia, I had been planning on attending the Baltimore Comic Con at least one of the days. I thought maybe I needed to go 2 days, but I wanted to try it out just one day and maybe make an adjustment later. And so I attended the Friday of the Baltimore Comic Con and had an absolutely fantastic time. I got in line about noon, they let us in at 1, and for 6 hours up until the closing time of the con, of the show floor, I was non-stop going to the numerous comic booths, wall books galore, graded books galore, raw books galore. I had an absolutely fantastic time. And while I was there, I also got to get pictures with several members of the IG and YouTube community. One of them being Longbox Love Affair. Got a picture with him. It was nice to visit with him for a minute. I got a picture with Nerdy Girl Comics. She actually picked up a signed Stan Lee and Herb Trimpe raw copy of Hulk 181. I was right there as she was making that purchase as I was looking at a couple other books. I also got a picture with Golden Age Guru, and these are people that I follow on Instagram, and so it was really neat to actually see them in person. And after the con was over, Shortboxed hosted a meetup at a restaurant and bar just across the street from the convention center, and I met up. I was just sitting there eating the food that they were providing, and a couple really nice guys, John and Tom, sat down with me, asked if they could sit with me, and we spent the next hour chatting it up about comic book collecting, comic book selling. The guys are from Connecticut and are hoping to set up this next year at Terrific Con in Connecticut, and I just had the greatest time getting to know two other members of the comic book community. I actually had not attended a comic book convention of any kind for probably 6 years. So I was on the lookout, not necessarily for anything specific, but as many of you know that watch my channel, you know that I'm on the hunt constantly for Wolverine books, and especially Hulk 181. I've never pulled the trigger. The most expensive book I'd ever purchase for my collection was a Fantastic Four #3 in a 4.0 for $630, and that was back in I think 2013 or 2014. And so I've been really looking for a Hulk 181. I've been watching them on eBay constantly, watching them on Shortboxed, watching them on Comic Link. My comic shop. I've looked all over the place, just waiting for the right time to do this, realizing that I was going to have to sell one of my books, or a number of my books, in fact, in order to make that happen. So I arrived at the con. I went around a number of different booths. There were so many to look from, and I did that for probably 3 or 4 hours before I really started to get an idea of what was available. I looked at every possible, at least on the wall, I looked at every possible Hulk 181, if it was a mid to lower grade, as well as giant size X-Men. Those are what I didn't expect that I was going to go home with anything massive, but I did know I was going to be looking just in case. But before I get into any of that, I did pick up other books that I was really happy to find. There was one vendor there who had only Spider-Man books, and I almost have a complete run of Ultimate Spider-Man, so I picked up issue 2, issue 3, issue 4, and issue 5, and I really only have about 15 more of these books to complete the entire run of Ultimate Spider-Man. And the issue 1 that I have is this 9.8 of the Dynamic Forces variant that I had bought raw several years ago and got graded in the last year with the Spider-Man custom label. And so I'm hoping to complete that run. I really never read Amazing Spider-Man growing up because my dad didn't have any, but I got into Ultimate Spider-Man in probably the mid-2000s and really enjoyed reading them. I've probably read every issue from like 24 all the way up to 160 into the Death of Spider-Man storyline, and then of course transitioning into the Miles Morales line. So picked these up just for that run. And then there was another booth that had, I keep calling it a booth. There was another vendor that had some amazing wall books, all raw, and happened to have this amazing copy of Marvel Comics Presents number 72, of course, the Weapon X origin of Wolverine. And this book is so dang crispy. Each corner, the only little flaw, it has tiny little flecks just off the bottom there, but I would be shocked if this book did not come back a 9.8 once it gets graded. I mean, this book is so sharp, not a tick on the front or back cover, and I couldn't believe I found this book for $55. That was a screaming deal, and I knew once I saw it, it was going to be mine if it was in that near mint condition. And then the first two purchases I actually made were when I was by Nerdy Girl Comics. She went to the same location that I did, and I just went into some of their back issues and found what I believe to be near mint plus, possible near mint 9.8 graded candidates of Wolverine number 6 and Wolverine number 5. I already have these books graded at 9.8s, but I found these two copies. I'm hoping that they would come back, hoping that they will eventually come back 9.8, and then I can just sell these off. But very nice, crispy, spine tick free on the spines copies of these two books. So really happy with that. Towards the very end, at about 6 o'clock, so an hour to go before the show floor was going to close, I found this Marvel Select figure of the Watcher. And any of you that happen to collect these figures know that the Watcher initially came out years ago, but it was such a scarce release that this cost a pretty penny for this particular figure, probably anywhere from $80 to $125, possibly even up to $150 for this figure. But I picked this up for $30, had to have the Watcher, and this amazing Watcher figure is going to go really nicely with my FF48 and my FF13, the first appearance of the Watcher. So to put these on display will be really great. That was the purpose of getting that Watcher figure. So as I mentioned earlier in my video, any of you that have been watching my channel know that I collect Wolverine. Wolverine is my favorite, along with Captain America, my two favorite characters in comics. And I love collecting Wolverine stuff. I have these figures up here. I have the Storm, the Nightcrawler over here, the Colossus here, along with these Marvel Select Wolverine figures. I have these fantastic Wolverine books behind me. And just to show, I have been a Wolverine fan since I was a little kid. I have evidence that as early as 9 years old, I was a Wolverine fan. And I was 9 in 1993. And of course, the X-Men animated series came out in 1991 that I would have watched. But when I was 9 years old, I had to do this book project that I titled Wolverine vs. Sabretooth. And I illustrated it. My mom did all the handwriting, and there it is, 1993 when I wrote this. And to give you an idea, and I am not a visual artist in any way, but there it is. Just to read a few of these pages from Dr. T. One day, Wolverine was practicing karate techniques. Wolverine picks up a familiar scent and recognizing it as Sabretooth, his enemy. So Wolverine attacks Sabretooth and then chases Sabretooth right out of the mansion. Wolverine slowly walks to the infirmary to wait for himself to heal. Right there. And that's the story, true believers. So I walked away from the Baltimore Comic Con with two books that I didn't think I was going to be getting. Maybe one, but two, no way. Let me show you the first one. This is huge for me. It is not an exaggeration to say that these are grails for me. They absolutely are. especially considering that these are far more expensive than anything, even close, that I've ever purchased. So after I purchased the Watcher figure, I went straight over to one booth that I knew had a couple books in the grade and the price range that I needed for this to work. I was looking for these books at a fair market value, using GPA, using the numerous eBay sales that I've been watching myself over months and months with these books. I did not want to overpay, but I also wanted to be fair. But yeah, I didn't want to overpay. So I grabbed these at about $6.55 after being at this one seller's booth for about 30 to 40 minutes trying to make this decision, talking to the seller and trying to make something happen. And I walked away with Giant Size X-Men #1, the second full appearance of Wolverine, and the first appearances of Colossus, Storm, Nightcrawler, and Thunderbird, who of course dies in issue 95, X-Men 95. And I bought this at a 4.0, absolutely stunning copy, in my opinion. Of course, now I'm biased since it's my book. Of course, it's going to have flaws that are representative of a very good grade, of a VG grade. So there's a color breaking line right through here, and then a second one that starts about here and goes down to the corner. And there's a slight scuff above Colossus's already, like, it looks like a scuff, but that's just part of the artwork. There's a slight scuff just above Colossus's head, and there's a slight color break over Thunderbird's body, and some just tiny bits of chipping at the bottom. You can see one right there. But other than that, right here is absolutely stunning. The colors are vibrant, they're bright, they pop out. A nice red up here on the Giant Size X-Men. And on the back, the biggest problem is just this line right through here. Right through here, there's a nice crease. But this was exactly the price range and the grade that I was looking for. I cannot believe that I have this book. I have been reading the X-Men since I was a little kid, starting with issue 129, which is the earliest X-Men book that my dad bought when he was 23 years old in 1979. He bought the first appearance of Emma Frost and Kitty Pryde, and I started with X-Men 129, reading through 141. He had those books, and to have this Giant Size #1 in my PC as something that I'll have for a long time until I decide to upgrade or something like that. But an absolute banger copy of this book. And it cost me $2,000, but I was ready to do it. I was ready to have this book in my collection. I was tired of not having it. And then this seller also had one more book. One more book that I have been wanting for the longest time. At least the last 10 years. This book was priced, 5 5s to 7 0s were priced back in 2012 when I seriously started considering this book and wanting this book. So 10 years ago, and those books were priced probably $600-700 at the time. Of course, that is no longer a thing for this particular book, but I knew I wanted it. I was tired of not having it in my collection, and as a Wolverine collector, this had to happen. So, the grail of my collection, true believers. I walked away with this copy of Hulk 181, the first full appearance of Wolverine. And this, what I love about this particular book, because I looked at several. I looked at a 2.0. I looked at some other raw books that were in this range, 3.5 to 4.5. What I love about this is that there are no creases of any kind on the Wendigo, on the Wolverine, or on the Hulk. There is some browning here on the Hulk title, and there's a scuff right up there. Of course, the corners are actually not too bad. This bottom corner really is not blunted. This corner up here, not blunted. It actually could use, at this angle, At this angle, the waves are right here. It could use just a clean and a press. On the back, and of course, it's completely intact. The stamp, the Marvel Value stamp is intact. Nothing is missing from this issue. I wanted a universal label. I did not want a book that was restored or that was in the qualified grade. On the back, what was interesting, it has this mark from when it was stacked probably on top of another book, which smeared onto this. But at some point, I would love to have somebody do a great job cleaning, and I'll pay for it, cleaning and pressing this book, resubmitting it, get a newer CGC label. But here I have this in a 4.5, a VG plus grade, and the colors are bright. They're not faded, at least I wouldn't say they're faded. Wolverine on his arm right here, there's there's a little bit of just white on the arm, just some of the paint coming off, but that really is the only spot. Other than that, that is an absolute stunning copy of this book. And if I'm being honest with you, it's a little emotional to even have this thing with me. To have both of these books in the PC now, yeah, it's an emotional thing. I've been on a high for the last couple days leading up to shooting this video because of having these two books. I can't believe they're mine, true believers. And yeah, I'm going to have to part with some of my other books, but the question was, do I love those more or do I love these more? And for me, it was, I got to have these first full appearances of Wolverine. And of course, you know, Hulk 180 is in my sights. Hulk 182 is in my sights. Those are going to be books that I am going to be going hard for next year in order to complete the trifecta of Hulk 180, 181, and 182. And then, no doubt, X-Men 94 to try to complete an entire graded run of Giant Size 1 all the way through Uncanny X-Men 142. And true believers, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for staying to the end. I cannot believe I have these books. Absolutely incredible now to go with my other Wolverine books that I have. I will keep building this collection. I love comic book collecting just like so many of you do. So thanks for tuning in. And as always, remember, comics for life.